everybody. Welcome to this session about transforming organization to be more data and AI driven. Welcome, Liesbeth. Thank you very much for doing this session. We wanted to capture, as I mentioned on stage, the perspective from practitioners. And BioLizard is a partner of ours, but forget the partnership aspect. What's very interesting about what they do is that they work with organizations in life sciences to get on a very specific journey from data to knowledge, and hence the name. They adapt to the customer environment and context and help them drive this transformation. So we thought there's a lot to learn and a lot, as a lot of you are working on taking a similar journey. There was a lot to discuss there. So very happy to welcome Liesbeth Ceelen, who's the CEO. Liesbeth, welcome. You have a very rich, your own journey. You've had a lot of experiences. Do you mind actually sharing with the audience how you got to become the Chief Executive Officer of BioLizard?
Okay, yes, with pleasure. So thanks for inviting me. I'm Liesbeth, currently the CEO of BioLizard indeed. I'm not a data scientist, not an IT expert, so I maybe have a different profile compared to you. I'm a vet by training, did a PhD in veterinary sciences, and then I moved to the pharma, to J&J. So I was quite attracted by drug development, but really from a scientific point of view. After a few years, I realized that entrepreneurship in me is becoming, is emerging, let's say, and I moved to startup and scale-up environment. So I left the multinational company, and I also switched from the drug development part to the service part. So I started offering services to pharma and biotech, initially more as a scientist, project manager, operational manager, quality manager. I did quite some things. And then in 2016, I really felt attracted to the commercial part. So I switched gear to actually business development. And I did that in different companies. I have quite some history in pathology, actually, also molecular pathology, digital pathology, that kind of stuff, sequencing, all related to the lab. And in 2019, I got the opportunity to start at BioLizard. So that was the next step, going from the wet lab to the dry lab. And I took up the role first as a business development director and then more to general management. So since a few years, I'm now the CEO. So I don't have a data science background, but I think having that clinical knowledge, that understanding of pharma and the lab environment, that really helps us as a company also to work for them and to help them. You want me to tell something about BioLizard?
I would love to. Thank you.
Okay. So BioLizard is a consulting and service company offering data science solutions, meaning that we do quite some bioinformatics analysis. Can be quite straightforward omics, but often it's very complex multi-omics data analytics. We also do single-cell omics, spatial, so all kind of bioinformatics services. Next, we also had a team focusing on machine learning, but always related to biology, biomedical data, that's very important. We have a team focusing on software engineering, and then also data management and data governance, which probably will be the topic of today. But since and you all know it, it's a very complex area, and you really need all those skills in order to come with the best solution for your clients. We have really a multidisciplinary team which is needed to deal with all those complex data-related questions.
Perfect. So let's start with the goals. As you work with customers as they embark on a journey to become more data and AI driven, what are they trying to achieve with this transformation?
A good question, but I think the answer is not that straightforward. It really depends on who is coming to us and who is asking the question. If it's a scientific profile, it's really often I want to use data to better understand the mode of action, for example, of a compound, or to really understand which pathways are involved, which genes, often very biomedical driven. getting clinically relevant insights out from the data. But sometimes we also are, or more operation managers, IT managers come to us, and then it's more related to process automation, but always again related to the lab or potentially also CMC environment. So we use AI, we use data-driven approaches also to reduce timelines in the lab, in processes, to, if possible, reduce manual interactions, which can be error-prone, which take time. So there we try to adopt also AI. Sometimes we also have more C-level people coming to us, and then it's often, I want to reduce time, I want to reduce cost, I want to go faster. Then it's often, I wouldn't say money-driven, but more business-driven. And sometimes it's, our competition is doing this. We don't want to miss the boat, so we also have to jump on the data-driven train, let's say. And sometimes it's also, we don't have to look only to the winning compounds. It's also knowing which compound may not be the right one, so killing your puppies early on in the process. So it really depends on all the company and the people that come to us.
And while each context is different, but if we were to summarize success is more automation, better decisions that ultimately shorten cycles.
Yes, definitely, and that's, you can quantify that more easily in a process, and time is shorter, costs are reduced, less errors. So then success can be, you can easily say, okay, it has been successful or not. When it's a scientific question, it's not always easy to say it has been successful. Often, what we still see is that scientists may believe it's magic, AI and data science, but it isn't, unfortunately. So it's not always black and white. And when you end up with your results in the gray zone, they may not believe it's a success, but it's what, if it's not in the data, it's not there. So we have to also keep always the biological relevance into account to talk about success, yes or no. So it's a great answer actually. What is success? Yeah.
So let's talk about the challenges. What are the obstacles that you see the companies that come to, the teams that come to you facing? Why is it so hard for them to actually transform, to put data and eventually AI at the core of the way they work and their processes?
Quite some obstacles, I would say at least 3, maybe even 4. First of all, the mindset in the company. It's very important that, and I guess everyone knows it already, but the leadership really has to believe in becoming a data-driven company, but not only the leadership, actually everyone working in the company, because if you have the buy-in from the leadership, but not from the people who have to do that, it will not work. So mindset is very important. What we still often see, unfortunately, is quite some friction between scientists, people in the lab, more interested in biology and science, but more than all the IT stuff around it. And then friction between them and the IT people who are more looking into the processes and don't care too much, if I can say it like that, about biology. So that can be a bottleneck. The third one, still often a challenge, is just data infrastructure as a whole. We've seen a lot already, and sometimes it's very immature, and then it's a long journey as it becomes data-driven. And a last one, and probably maybe even the most important one, data quality. Not yet data quantity, but definitely data quality. So that's definitely a challenge.
People and process. Well, mindset. You started with mindset. People and processes. Yeah. Infrastructure / ecology, and then the data is a major one. Yeah. Okay, perfect. Let's talk a bit about the solution and best practices without you revealing trade secrets and such. But maybe an important question is, where do you begin as you guide companies that need to tackle this transformation? where do you start the journey?
Often it's with education. It's showing that it is important. It's not always easy because it's still often perceived as a cost, not as an investment, because it's a long trajectory before you even see a certain outcome. So it's really talking with leadership, but also people in the company who have to do the job. So really understanding the mindset in the company. So there again with the mindset, but making sure that all the stakeholders in the company are at on the same page. That's very important. If that's not the case, and we had it before, but it will not work. We know it up front, it won't be a success. And then secondly, it's really, sometimes we have companies coming to us, competitions using AI, we also want to do it, but that's not the right way to start a process. You really have to know what you want to get out of the data. So we always start with a strategy, but with the end goal in mind. What do you want to get out of the data? What is your question? What is your goal? And then we start, in most cases, really with a few weeks, few months, interviews with all stakeholders, understanding very well what do you have in place, what are the strengths, what are the gaps. But we also come up then already with a roadmap, with recommendations, with a plan with different steps, milestones, to make it really tangible. Because data management, data governance can sound quite fluffy, so you have to make it tangible. That is very important. And once that strategy is clear, then we start looking, and the goal is clear, we start looking into the data. What do you have now in place? How is everything set up? And then only then we start thinking about, okay, we should apply this technology, this methodology. Maybe AI is even not worthwhile thinking of. And what also is very important, and we've seen that it works, is also coming up with some proof of concept. So definitely for scientists, like if you can show with your data, even when it's a very small project, it works, and we can gain some success or make some improvements for you, then it's a success. And we had some projects really starting with data management and then really implementing data analytics, and then you were for a while. But that the proof of concept, starting small, that's very important.
So showcasing the value, getting the teams to follow and then believe progressively.
Yeah, and don't stop after the second phase with a PowerPoint presentation as a consultant. That's what you have to do. Just also do it and show it. Yeah.
And you mentioned this divide between IT and scientists. I guess like these prototypes are part of it, but how do you advise or how do you see organizations bridging that divide between IT and scientists?
In our case, if we see that there is still a big gap and we need to bridge that, it's very important to speak the language of a data scientist, an IT expert, but also understanding the biology. What only talking about data science and IT, that will not work. Then the scientists, the biologists will not feel appreciated, but the other way around is also important. So we really try to be that data translator between both teams or more teams, and sometimes it just takes time. It's sometimes even psychology, listening, talking, understanding, and again showcasing with their own data sets, like there is value in it. And then it works, but it takes time, and it's understanding, doing initially a lot of interviews, really understanding what you have and what you can get out of it.
Is this a role? I'm just curious. Is this a role that you see remaining between IT and actually the data scientists, because each of them have their own agenda, evolution and such, so you kind of need to keep them in sync. So this is a role you see become a permanent role within these organizations?
I guess it's quite an important role, and as BioLizard, for example, we have some people that stay in a company just not only for training or implementation, but also just to nurturing and keeping that culture, data-driven culture alive. So I see indeed evolving in the companies that might be indeed a permanent role. Yeah.
And as we were preparing this discussion, the interesting element is that you had a slightly different definition as well for this role, which is to be a data diplomat, which is to be in the middle and bring these, not that there's a war at play, but it's really different cultures that are. Let's talk about some of your customers. Could you give us an example of a company that has done this successfully? What does it look like in real life?
We have few companies. I can give you 2 examples, but one, and actually we worked, or we're still working there together. It's a Belgian biotech company. They grew quite fast, I must say, and that's what we often see when a biotech company starts. Everyone keeps their data a bit anywhere. You start with a small team, you talk to each other, everyone knows from each other which data is in place. But of course, from the moment that you start growing, you have different departments, everything is scattered, and there is no central data storage, data plan, and then first of all you get that friction that computational biologists don't get access anymore to all the data, so it becomes very hard to do data integration and whatever. So in that company, we really saw, or they were struggling with the centralized data storage, but also the data streams, versioning of data, or the algorithms. Also there we saw quite some friction between different departments because everyone is just doing their job and they don't want to be bothered about other stuff. And also, quite data silos, but everything was separate, which is of course not the ideal situation if you want to become data driven. So I know Domino has been implemented there, and we really helped them also with now it's really centralized. Everyone is using the same or data in the same place. It's not in silos anymore. Everything, all the steps are standardized. The versioning is done in a standardized way. People talk to each other, so it's really about centralization, and we still help them with also if they want to implement a new machine learning algorithm or whatever, we can help them with them. But it really starts from centralizing everything and having the same mindset and the same goal. And another example is IT came to us. They really wanted to set up a data management plan. So we really helped them with putting everything in place, a roadmap, a gap analysis. We came up with recommendations based on what we saw, and sometimes it's little things, or maybe not that little. We hear sometimes that they throw away negative results, and we don't keep negative data. Of course, if you want to become data-driven, if you want to adopt machine learning, these data are crucial. So it's a simple recommendation, but with a lot of value. And there we selected 8 proof of concepts, some longer term, some quick wins. And one example was, or one proof of concept was, for example, in the lab that I will try to explain it very short or brief. Normally in the lab, it takes 3 to 4 months, and then they come to a certain point where the antibody has to bind during the purification step to protein A, but they don't know it up front. So if it doesn't bind or if it doesn't work well, they lost quite some time. And also, it's quite frustrating for the scientists. So we developed a predictive model before you start that 3-4 month trajectory in the lab, to predict what will be the binding rate. So it was with a simple tool, an algorithm that we implemented there, and it's quite successful. So with a little improvement step within the entire workflow, you can also convince the scientists, and that was a quick win, and they're still using it. We're now retraining the model, so that's another example.
Fascinating. So identifying the promising combination, so to speak, and then stopping the other ones. I wanted to add also something about the first example. This notion of centralization is very important to provide the right tools to all the various teams, but address also the specificities, and they can work on their without constraints on their own track, so to speak, which I think is a lot of the value. And we've seen this joint customer actually starting to adopt technologies like some GenAI LLMs actually in the way they improve data access to their for the scientists, and not having to teach the scientists SQL or these kind of things, just access the data, asking your words. So thank you for this real life perspective. It is super important to us. Let's talk a bit about governance and regulation. How should companies approach governance? Governance is at time, I know on the IT side, it's almost like a word that scares people, but how should organizations approach governance in that data and AI initiative?
It's actually, again, starting with the mindset. It's really the leadership. A lot of companies still talk about data assets, AI. We want to become data-driven, but if the leadership, if the DNA, if the culture is not data-driven, it will not work. So that's always the first step. And also keeping in mind that if you want to become data-driven and the data governance in general, then it's all those steps and data input. It's not just about technology, it's really all those steps. And maybe a nice quote is also like, it's more important doing the right thing than doing the thing right. Meaning, it's very important, an example, using good data, high quality data, rather than applying the most or the perfect machine learning model. So you can, if you apply a great model, but your data is crap, your outcome also will be crap. So data governance, it's a bit leadership, again, mindset, but also understanding the quality of your data, and data infrastructure in general.
So we, as we talk to customers, sometimes we also getting asked, is there a conflict between innovation? We live crazy times where one of the hardest things is keeping up, and on the other end is this increased regulatory pressure, I will call it. How do you balance them, or can one actually reinforce the other? What's your perspective? What do you tell your customers?
What we tell is do things in parallel. You have your regulated environment, everything that's also definitely in drug development you have to do, but it shouldn't stop you to, in parallel, do some innovation. Also in our company, we are very regulated for some projects, but we also have an innovation track. Next week we will have a hackathon, and to be honest, from the hackathon last year, we started, a great idea came out of it, and we developed a product out of that. And within a company, you definitely don't have to stop doing innovation. And I just told in the beginning that I have a background in pathology. I think digital pathology is a very nice example of that. It's a very conservative field, I must say. And when we in the lab where I was working in 2012, so it's quite a while ago, we were the first one adopting digital pathology, and we were the first one in Belgium. It was really state of the art, but now I think more and more labs are adopting it, and not only digital pathology, but also the algorithms like quantifying specific stainings. 10 years ago, it was nobody wanted everything and it would be embedded in routine, but now pathologists also realize, okay, this innovation really can help us. So I think that's a very nice example of don't stop being innovative, because the regulation is so strict. But I'm not saying that you should use any innovative tool in any clinical trial or whatever, of course, or in hospitals, but they definitely can reinforce each other, yeah.
Right. And by the one thing we didn't mention about BioLizard is that they're really in between these two worlds, because you're also I would call it that accredited like research partner in some of the European countries where you work closely. So you're really, as a company, you operate really in the middle of this Venn diagram. Speaking of regulation, EU Act is coming in a matter of months, not years. How do you see customers preparing, reacting to this upcoming deadline?
To be honest, we don't get too much questions specifically on the act. I think it's maybe still too new for them, but I must say that definitely the last few weeks, maybe I start just paying more attention to it, but we get much more questions also about security, privacy, data leaks, stuff like that. If we say, okay, we have our cloud environment, is it safe, stuff like that. So it's questions that we get it's really related to privacy, security, but then of course also they don't like black boxes. So it's very important that the AI, the methodologies that you use, at least for us, it's important to be transparent, very clear. We've done this, and that the client, then it's not a black box, that the client really knows, okay, you have done this, it should be explainable. And also important is what we also always say, it's not only a computer, it's not only an algorithm, you have to be computer-centric, but also human-centric. So we always will involve humans to tackle all those potential concerns.
Perfect. We have an audience, we have quite a few people that I know are in the life sciences industry, but we have a broader audience. Are there some best practices? Maybe life sciences has been, as we were discussing, has been regulated for quite some time. Are there some best practices that can be proposed to other industries in terms of how to actually apply this notion of AI governance? So from your perspective, having been deep into the industry and driven these analytics and data and AI initiatives?
It's a good question, and I just can speak for myself, I guess, but what I think privacy, what I find very annoying is if you buy something, like for example in the e-commerce, when you buy something on the internet, a fridge for example, I open Facebook, I'm the Facebook generation, I'm sorry, and suddenly you get publicity for buying a fridge. First of all, it's stupid because I just bought one, but secondly, it's just annoying. So like privacy in e-commerce, I think that definitely could be better, and then healthcare definitely could be a nice example. That's just one example, but I think in general, any data that is related to your own personal life, it shouldn't be even medical. I think there could be more related to security and privacy. That's one example that affects me personally, I would say. Yeah.
Especially as this data and the practices are in the middle of regulation, your IP, and then sometimes personal data. So I think we can all relate to this. And as a marketer, I totally we have to do better. So one last question that was not scripted before we open for more Q&A, but what does the future look like for you? What's exciting for you in terms of use cases? You work on research with a lot of organizations in Europe. What are the use cases? Applying AI to the right data. What's the next wave? How research is going to be transformed? What are you looking for?
Mm-hmm. Personally, for BioLizard, I think we are building Biolizard. It's a framework, a software really to present data in a very understandable way. So it's very personalized. The dashboard, I always call it's the next level of reporting your results instead of static PDF files. So BioLizard, that's really for us quite, that's something that we're really looking forward to have it in every company. But just in general, life sciences, and if I look at drug development, having those AI-driven compounds on the market, so really that's big successes, because it takes a while that we really can prove that it never will be alone AI, but if you also adopt in the entire process AI together then again with human brains, if we could see some successes or more and more successes, that would be great, I think.
Perfect. Thanks a lot. Any questions in the audience? I think we have a microphone somewhere. If Ian is, thank you, Ian.
I'd like to use it. Is it on? Is it on? Okay,
Yes.
Great. Thank you, Liesbeth, for sharing your insight and experience. Really appreciated that. So earlier you talked about the importance of doing proof of concepts, right? So we're doing a lot of experimentations at GSK as well, try out new ideas, see where it takes us, right? So do you have any advice in terms of how do you go from experimentation to productionization, relatively quickly with speed and agility?
How? You mean time-wise or yeah? Yeah, like the example, for example, that I gave about optimizing the workflow in the lab, and it started really small, and you have to work with the data that you have, and it was a good model, but I would not say that we really can speed up the process. We also realized we need more data. And then suddenly you're 6 months further, because the good recommendation is that or the advice would be at least don't stop and give the advice to the company, keep your data in the right way, and we then can retrain the model and improve it even better. But I don't think, unfortunately, that you really can speed up any process unless you have all the data available. That was a typical. But the good thing is that if you can show it to the people in the company with just a small proof of concept, even if it's not perfect, then you have them. Yeah, then they're positive, and then they're really also open to collect all data and work together more in a data-driven way. But it's not that we have that magic formula to speed up everything, unfortunately. But it's being honest and transparent, and yeah.
Ian, we have a question right here, and then another one after. Oh, sorry, you'll do next.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Liesbeth. The question is, we all know on a theory, governance is very important, very, very important. On theory, on the books, when we read, governance is very important. But when we actually do any proof of concept or something, we know which data set we want to use, and everything is ready. And the governance guys come in, no, you can't do this, you can't do this. Then we don't do anything, we raise a data set, we all agree, this is the data set we're going to use it. And these governance guys, which we know, we love them, but then they are the blockers, they don't allow this data to use it. And then if you don't do the POC, this AI thing, whatever you wanted to have it, we don't get it. So how do you think we should make that thin line of governance rather than this firewall? We can make that excuse or something. Have you gone through this experience of the governance, too much governance, strict governance, where like the other way around, something like that?
No, but it's happened to us and to our clients as well. And I must say it's not easy, and it takes time. Exactly. First of all, the mindset, but potentially also indeed regulation. What we then try to do is also trying to convince them with other success stories. If you do it, this could be the outcome. But as said, it's not always tangible. It's not black and white. So unfortunately, I cannot give you now the answer. You have to deal with that. But we really talk to so many stakeholders, and sometimes it's not months, sometimes it's more than a year, but it helps to come up with some success stories. Or that you do something, a proof of concept in R&D setting, and then, for example, CMC sees that, and then, okay, it might be worthwhile trying. So it's based on small steps, otherwise, it will be very hard. Yeah, it takes time. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You had a question?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So, thank you for your insight. It's very good. I'm from IBM Consulting and Strategy Consultant, so we support organizations to really organize themselves, get the right people, the right capabilities to go and get the value from data. And you already touched on it, and I would love to have your advice on that as well. It's like, how do you drive the right culture and the mindset within the company to collaborate more? You said like we have different functions, we tend to be siloed. Everybody only speaking his own language. I don't even want to know about what is happening next to me. So how do you help your client to drive that collaboration within the organization, and also just drive the culture that everybody understands why they're actually there,
The first step definitely is the leadership, the CEO, if he or she is not believing that you should become data-driven, I don't think it ever will work. And that takes time. That takes time again. What helps indeed is coming up again with success stories from other companies or like the competitive, showing them if you become data-driven, you might get competitive advantage or keep your competitive advantage. I think that's really the first step. Otherwise, if there is no buy-in, there never will be any success. If the leadership strongly believes in it, budget also will become available, and then again it takes time. But our people, we noticed if you only talk IT language, if I can call it like that, biologists feel a bit sometimes offended if you only speak biology, IT people. So our people have really, they know the both worlds, and that's very important. And understand, listen, and again come up with some success stories, even if when it's also about trust and having confidence in a partner. But speaking that same language, that's so important. Yeah.
That's a quick follow-up then. So how do you grow those multi-skilled people? You put in place training plan or support the client to put in place training plan so that you create that pool of people who can understand both worlds basically. Is that one word?
Absolutely, yeah. So often so if we do a data management project and implementation of some data analytics, our people also still stay quite some time in the company as a speaking point, and then it's all about training, often still education. But again, from the moment that you can show some success with our own data, it's a total different story. But it takes time, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. Yeah, one last question. Yes, one more question, absolutely.
Thank you for the wonderful conversation. Work for a Mediacom agency, it's in Mediacom. It was interesting about what you're saying about regulation and how it impacted your personal life. We're finding actually that because of the regulation, is that marketing tools are getting actually worse, right? We're seeing that challenge, cookie deprecation is around the corner for next year. We're seeing in my industry a rise of synthetic data as being kind of the next frontier to improve our tools. Just wondering in life sciences and in your industry, how do you see that, if you see the rise of synthetic data sets, and what you're doing internally maybe to regulate that or to work with that new trend?
Is the question about synthetic data sets that we have? Yeah, it's regulation sometimes indeed makes it's more difficult. That's true. Actually, that's the answer. You're right. But on the other hand, it's also good to have some regulation. Otherwise, it would be the Wild West. It's true. It's finding that balance. Yeah. But sometimes we're really also blocked by regulation. But without it would probably be worse. Yeah.
And sometimes innovation is driven by constraints as well. So maybe we'll see where it goes. Well, we spoke a lot about mindset. We spoke a lot about people. We haven't spoken a lot about technology, and that's perfect because that's how we spoke a lot about data as well. So thanks for the exchange. We also spoke a lot about leadership, which is interesting. We have a lot of data science and IT leaders, so the change starts here as well. Thank you so much, Liesbeth, for your insights and your experience, and congrats for what BioLizard is doing.